conference room is. If we had something exciting. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the City of Tyler Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for April the 11th. We're happy to have all our friends and neighbors and the members of the public here. This, like all of our meetings, is open to the public, and we're glad to have people here who have an interest in what's going on in their city. At the conclusion of this meeting, we'll have a work session. The Planning and Zoning Commission always has a work session to plan for our next meeting, and that will be at whenever we recess here across the street at 423 West Ferguson in the large conference room. That meeting, like all of our meetings, is open to the public, and all are welcome. The first order of business is roll call. Sheila?
Yes, sir. Lloyd Nichols.
Present.
John Landis.
Here.
Blair Swain. Beth Whitney. Jimmy Reed.
Present.
Pamela Phoenix.
Present.
Chairman Hudson.
Present. Mr. Reed?
Yes, sir.
The first item on our agenda is Z22-063. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself from Z22-063.
Somebody remind me to call him and get him back.
Yes.
Have we done the minutes yet?
Oh, yeah, well, I'm sorry. I'm getting out of order. See, I'm getting out of order. The Planning and Zoning Commission makes recommendations to the City Council. All items approved today will be heard by the City Council at its regular meeting on Wednesday, April 26th, commencing at 9 a.m. If you received a notice for this meeting, you've also received a notice for the City Council meeting. Subdivision plats are approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission solely unless there's a request for waiver of escrow fees or construction. Only the City Council makes financial decisions. If an item is denied, the applicant has 10 calendar days to file a written appeal with the Planning Department. The appeal will then be acted upon by the City Council. If you're here to speak for and against an item, please state your name and address for the record. Comments should be limited to 5 minutes or less, although extensions of time may be granted by the chair upon request. And I've already made the announcement about our work session. The next item on our agenda is minutes from the March 7th meeting. As commissioners had an opportunity to review those. Any corrections, changes? If not, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes from March 7th, 2023.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve those minutes. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? At this point, Mr. Reed?
Yep. Obviously. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recuse myself from Z22-063, please.
Thank you, Gene. The next item on our agenda is Z22-063. Christine Vasquez was.
Vote to take it off the table.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to remove that item from the table. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Caleb.
All right. Good afternoon, commissioners. This is a previously tabled item located on 1709 Pinecrest Drive. This is a zone change request from PMF Planned Multifamily to POD Planned Office District. This is the location. The applicant is requesting the zone change in order to develop the property with 4 office buildings. The current zoning is a multifamily zoning that was planned out that never ended up being developed there. And now they're proposing, a new applicant is coming in proposing to develop with office spaces. The adjacent properties to the north and to the west are zoned PCD, Planned Commercial District, and are developed with commercial uses. The adjacent property to the east, kind of on that little panhandle, is owned PMF, Planned Multifamily, and then also R1D. The multifamily is developed with a quadplex, and then the rest are single-family homes. And then to the south, kind of there encompassing the south and the eastern portion is all zoned R1D and are developed with single-family homes. The future land use guide identifies this property as being townhouse/garden apartment. This would amend that future land use guide to be office. As you can see, it's an undeveloped tract of land there. This is the current site plan for the property, or the proposed site plan for the property. The site plan proposes 4 office buildings with a 15-foot buffer yard that extends along the portion that is adjacent to the R1D residential homes. The planting area includes 2 large trees and 1 shrub every 35 linear feet, which would exceed the expectations set from the Unified Development Code. In addition, a 4-foot retaining wall and water retention pond would be located on site due to the change in grade. Parking, signage, and landscaping would all be as per the Unified Development Code. In addition, from what we've heard from the adjacent property owners, height being a concern, the property would be restricted to 1-story buildings. On that site plan, you can't quite maybe see here, but they do give a maximum height listed for each building. These 2 buildings here, I believe are both restricted to 28 feet in height. This building here is 26 feet, this building would be 24 feet in height. And that is to the peak of the roof. Generally, when the city measures height of a structure, we don't measure to the tippy top peak, we measure to the center line of the midpoint of the roof, which is probably gonna be about a few feet, maybe 4 or 6 feet fewer than that, which would fall well within the allowance for the zoning. This is the property as seen from that east portion along Pinecrest. They would have a separate driveway that attaches this property to Pinecrest. Initially, when this came up at the first time, there were talks about getting shared access with the property to the north or to the west there, that commercial development. That ended up not panning out, but our code does allow for them to have a separate driveway there. And so that's what they're proposing to do. Okay, of the 27 notices that were mailed out, 2 notices were received in opposition to the request for a protest percentage of 20.69%. As that exceeds 20%, a favorable vote of 3/4 of City Council is required in order to approve the request. I think maybe at least one of these might be a holdover from a previous zoning request, because I believe they were against allowing the 2-story commercial structure, which this would not be doing. And then primarily the neighbor to the north, the large commercial development, was against the increase in drainage and potential runoff that could come from this site. That would primarily be addressed during the actual construction phase. On the site plan, they do note an area for a retention pond. We've spoken with our development services engineer, and he's finds this to be acceptable for the time, as once building plans come up, it'll be determined whether a retention pond or other form of detention or retention is required for the site. But those concerns would be addressed at that time, not necessarily during the zoning. All this being said, staff has performed a technical review of the request and finds that it is consistent with the approval criteria, and staff would recommend approval of the zone change request.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay. Anyone? If not, I have a list of people who've signed up to speak, and the only name I have is Christine Vasquez. Is Ms. Vasquez, would you like to have anything?
Only done to answer questions.
Would you come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record, please?
Christine Vasquez, 312 County Road 279, Tyler, Texas 75705.
And you're the developer?
Yes, well, I'm the
Any-
property owner. I'm gonna pass it
Property.
over to, after we get this established, I'm gonna pass it off.
Any questions from Ms. Vasquez? Well, sir, if you'd like, thank you. Stick around, we may have some questions. Others who would like to speak? Yes, sir. If you'd come to the mic and state your name and address for the record.
Afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Robert Bruce. I live at 1721 Pinecrest. I also represent all families along the eastern side, lots 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And we're not against this development, but we have had a history of dealing with noise from Planet Fitness and from the Rosewood Shopping Center trucks parking at night. So we continue to be concerned about traffic in this site. The narrative is still incomplete in our minds. We don't know exactly what kind of offices or things are going in there. And we had heard an earlier narrative which would allow for a restaurant there. We're very much against that. We already deal with rodent abatement problems in the restaurant that's immediately adjoining this property in the Rosewood Center. Additionally, Caleb has informed me that it's 1 story, and I've heard the height as high as 21 feet. If that's a pitched roof, I don't have a problem. If it's a flat roof, those are gonna be looking down inside our 14-foot high fences. And, you know, happy to have you as a good neighbor. I just don't know exactly what's going in there and when. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. Ms. Vasquez, do you want to address some of those questions?
They are gonna be built like a home with a pitch, and we are gonna have restricted professional offices that's gonna be our zoning. So, the city will require it to be like doctors and lawyers and people with regular business hours. Hopefully, we're not too loud.
Okay.
On the site plan, it does call out the building use as being general office. So something like a restaurant wouldn't be permitted. Just what would fall under our development code and our use table as being general office, which will be minimal impact, similar to what would be allowed in like a restricted professional office zone.
And Ms. Vasquez, you're intending an office here yourself, is that correct? Is that
Yes, yes, I'm gonna be the smaller one at the top of the screen.
All right, any other questions from Ms. Vasquez? Yes, sir, if there's somebody in the back who'd like to speak, if you'd come forward.
Yes, my name is Brad Donnelly, 212 Old Grande Boulevard, is, our office address. And I guess our objection was not, recorded on this parcel. We have the parcel to the west of this property, which is the Tanglewood Shopping Center there. This property, the history was all those houses and this parcel used to be one single residence. And when it was developed for the single-family homes, magically strange things started happening at our property. This property is a former lake, and with the lake reemerged, and we now have 3 sump pumps on our property as a result that were never needed prior to the site work that was done at this property. So it does have a private drainage ditch that was set up and goes across to Loop 323, but that was built out for our property, not for this parcel. So that is my concern, and I don't know. I know you've discussed it. The engineer's looking at it, but the engineer obviously blessed the first issue, which caused my sump pumps to be added to my parcel.
All right, thank you, sir. Any questions for this gentleman?
Yes, one question. So you're thinking if this construction goes forward, that your lot 18 will have repercussions as it did when the residences?
Given the site's history and the goofiness of it, I don't have comfort that it's going to work out all for the better.
So you're against this project?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And we're lot 18, lot
50.
960.
I know you've addressed this concern previously, and I think that's why the detention pond was added to this, your complaint was heard, and I believe that's what part of it is.
But the way a retention pond works is it holds the water until it overflows and then gushes on out. So when you have a heavy rain, I don't know how that magically solves things. Because it's not going to go uphill.
Right. It's meant to minimize that.
Yeah.
Any other questions, John? All right, thank you, sir, for your time and presence. Ms. Vasquez, you're aware of site issues?
Yes, I've talked with, Mr. Darrell with the development and, a civil engineer who is going to work this out and let that water flow at a slower rate. It's gonna naturally go down, yes, but we're gonna do what we can to not make it worse. And of course, every step of the way, we have to be approved, right?
Any questions from Ms. Vasquez? All right, are there others here who wish to speak? This is a zoning item. We're here to address the zoning of this piece of property. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Z22-063.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve this zoning change. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item's approved. Next item on the agenda is PD 23-008. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, Jimmy. I love it, Jimmy. The next item, let the record show that Mr. Reed is back in the room. The next zoning item is PD 23-008, William Ralph. We okay?
Yes.
Kyle?
Good afternoon. This is a zone change request from R1A Single Family Residential District to PMF Planned Multifamily Residential District. This is to allow, or the applicant is requesting the zone change to allow for the development of 35 units on one lot. The applicant has prepared a site plan for the development, which I will show in a minute here. The adjacent properties to the west are zoned for single family use and are developed with single family homes. To the north is the location of the Idlewild community pool, and then to the east, zoned for commercial uses and developed as such, a variety of retail and restaurant or fast food restaurant uses. And then to the south is developed with an office development. This request, or the future land use guide identifies the property as single family, medium, low density. This request, if approved, would amend the future land use guide to townhome garden apartment. This is the property here. You can see the existing development to the west and to the east. Well, actually, surrounding the property. Here's the site plan that's been proposed by the applicant. It does show the plan for four single-story quadplex buildings, which are on the west side, or the left side of the plan here, and then the third or the fourth one being on the north side, adjacent to the pool. So those buildings are single-story, four units. And then the buildings to the kind of the southeast or the lower right corner of the plan are two-story structures, quadplexes or fourplexes, and then a 5 and a 6-plex on the south side. The applicant is proposing up to 35 units in these buildings density of 11.15 units per acre. They are proposing this development to have gated access, which would be to Richmond Road on the southwest or the lower left side of the plan. The setbacks are generally 20 feet around the north and west side of and south of the property, and then a little bit smaller on the east side near the commercial properties. The maximum height is limited to 42 feet tall, and the applicant does show the minimum amount of parking spaces required based off the use, as well as additional parking for guests on the property. This site plan is this was submitted yesterday to staff, which was intended to address the concerns that staff, or the review comments that staff had to the applicant originally, which some of those concerns were related to fire access or fire turnaround within the development. They have proposed a turnaround drive near the north side of the property there to allow a fire truck to back up into that space there, and then turn around if they have to. And then also address questions about parking and trash pickups, and there are no trash enclosures or trash dumpsters on this property, that they will be utilizing individual trash bins, I guess, for that. We did check with our solid waste department. They don't foresee an issue with that type of service for this development. And then also on the gated access, the applicant has addressed that, because that comment about having enough space there for a turnaround if they are denied, somebody is denied access through the gate, that they can still turn around and get back to the street. The site plan does also shows a 6-foot wooden fence surrounding the property to the gate on the southwest side there. The applicant, so a little bit of history on this property here. Back in June of 2020, the applicant did request a zone change for a townhome development on this property to develop 15 units. It was most of his property, but the applicant did add property or add land to their property here since then. But that request was not approved. And then back in September of 2020, there was a request for a zone change for R1B, single-family detached, and that request that would have allowed for the development of up to approximately 11 single-family homes on the property. That request was also not approved by the Planning Commission or City Council. This request, or since that time, the applicant has purchased the property to the south and added that into this arrangement here. So there's additional land involved, and that, my understanding is that the intention there was to allow for the driveway for this development to be south of the pool area and closer to Rice Road, as they've shown here. The applicant held a neighborhood meeting at the Idlewild Pool on March 20th. The general consensus following that meeting, or at the meeting and following that meeting, was that the proposed number of units and the proposed form of development would be inconsistent with the character of the established neighborhood, and that if the property is to be developed, that the preference is as developed as R1A, which would allow for the development of single-family homes on a minimum of 9,000 square foot lots. Of the notices that were sent out, we did receive 2 notices in favor, or responses in favor, one by the applicant and one from the applicant's neighbor. And then we did receive 6 in opposition from the neighbors that would live within the 200 feet radius of the property being rezoned. And the protest calculation for that is 25%, or 25.97%. That's not up here, but just over 25%. And as the protest exceeds 20%, that will require that city council, if they are to approve the request, they would have to do so with a 3/4 majority. That standard is for city council. It's not a standard for the planning commission to make a recommendation. We did receive approximately 77 letters in opposition from neighbors that live outside the 200 feet radius, but within the Idlewild subdivision or community, generally to the north and the west. And all the notices that we received in opposition or against the request are generally concerned with, or the opposition is concerned with the proposed density of the development being much higher than the existing form of development. The surrounding properties to the west, or the properties to the west, were developed on much larger lots than say what the current R1A zoning would require. And so I'll go back to the map here. You can see that the form of development and the style of development are much larger single-family lots, and so there's concern about the impact on the increased density and how that affects the existing neighborhood. And then also some concerns about safety, traffic, utilities, and then the concerns about potential rental units, or with the property being on a single property that those would be rental units. In evaluating the impact of traffic, the proposed development does not meet the threshold to conduct a traffic impact analysis. And while there are no anticipated significant impacts from a traffic perspective, any additional units within this area would that be beyond what's currently permissible would add to any perceived or actual issues that exist within the Richmond Road or Old Timberwild or Rice Road area. And then also there was concerns about utilities and things like that, and how this would impact that. We did check with Tyler Water Utilities to make sure that, or to ask if there were any known issues. Most of the issues in the area are related to, are private and not within the main, the sewer main or water main, but that there is a planned upsizing of the sewer main to 8-inch pipe in the future. So there are plans to address some of the existing issues or concerns in the area, but generally there was no concern with this development's impact to the water or the sewer system capacity. The proposed development of attached single-family homes and the proposed density are not in keeping with the character of the neighborhood as I've described before. Like I mentioned, that's largely due to the previous form of development on large single-family lots. While the property abuts commercial zoning to the east and office zoning to the south, the applicant has not demonstrated why the proposed development is the most appropriate change for the property when considering the existing characteristics of the nearby neighborhood. All other departments have reviewed the application and anticipate no significant impact on services and facilities. But staff has performed a technical review of the proposal and finds that it's generally inconsistent with the approval criteria, and staff recommends denial.
Well, thank you, Kyle. Any questions for city staff?
Kyle, I have a excuse me, just a couple questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so the layout is different than the one that we have in our packet. So has staff had an opportunity to review that for turnaround, for parking, for all those other boxes that need to be checked in regards to approval criteria?
Not fully, no. As of today, I had not heard back on the fire aspect. it does appear like that does meet the criteria, but I haven't received a final okay on that,
Okay.
for the turnaround
Mhm.
there. All the other items have been addressed.
Okay, so parking, trash, water, sewer, storm, those kinds of things, but not fire.
No, but I anticipate that. So the requirement is that there's no distance beyond 150 feet or more without the ability to turn around.
Right.
So, and maybe the applicant does have that measurement, but it's not on here to say that that's being met. It looks like it probably is, but the fire marshal did say that they'd have to look at it further, but I haven't received that confirmation yet.
Okay. Next question is in regards to staff's recommendation for denial. From what you said, it says based upon character and what's most appropriate for the parcel. So what would be your recommendation for what would be most appropriate if this is not most appropriate?
Well, I would say
Excuse me.
staff's performing a technical review on what's being proposed.
Okay.
And so without the applicant proposing something, without any other proposal, that staff would say that this proposal is not in keeping with the requirements or the criteria for a zone change. And so I would say that the burden of persuasion is upon the applicant to say that they are meeting all the criteria for approval.
Okay.
But at this point, staff is, in our technical review, we don't find that it does.
Okay. Thank you, Kyle.
And Kyle, staff has advised the applicant of this information that this is not consistent with.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for city staff? I have a card from Patrick Cooper. Mr. Cooper, wish to speak? If you'd come forward and state your name and address for the record.
I'll get to you first. My name's Patrick Cooper. I live at 4901 Trenton Drive, which is in Ottawa. Appreciate y'all taking the time to hear all this out. I think a lot of concerns that Kyle brought up are concerns. For 60 years, this has been a single-family residential neighborhood. Adding 35 rental homes into what used to be people's backyards just doesn't seem consistent with the intentions of the neighborhood. Essentially you're bringing in a revolving door of 100 renters if you assume 3 people per household. This is a neighborhood where kids hop on their bikes, ride around, go knock on their neighbors' doors, feel comfortable with everybody. And I think adding essentially 100 people to this situation is not ideal or what it was intended for. That being said, I think it would devalue the neighborhood. It's one of Tyler's most sought after neighborhoods. As I'm sure you can see in your, and if you were to look at the tax increases that have come through on property taxes alone, I think gone up 20% in the last 2 years. That's because the value's going up, people are buying in there, fixing up the houses. It's just one of the few and far between type, family-oriented neighborhoods that we have. So I think it's important to keep that distinguishment. As Kyle mentioned, they've proposed much less intrusive applications in the past that have been denied. I think it's almost gotten to the point where it's a little silly as to the, suggestions and the desires for this area. I would just ask y'all if you lived in somewhere that had big backyards and somebody pieced it together over time and wanted to put 35 units back there. I honestly think it's preposterous. I think goes way beyond anything that it was intended for. And I know a lot of people want to speak, so I'll just kind of leave it at that, but I, strongly oppose this and think that we go with city staff recommendation of denying it. Seems pretty simple to me, but I know a lot of other people want to speak, so thank you.
Mr. Cooper, thank you for your time and presence. Any questions for Mr. Cooper? Thank you again for your time and presence. Carrie King. Just state your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Carrie King. I reside at 4411 Richmond Road. Lived there for 22 years in Idlewild. I am a member of the Idlewild Park and Pool. Served as a board member in the past. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. We love our neighborhood. It's one of the greatest neighborhoods in Tyler, in my opinion, and we want to keep it that way. At least twice before, as Kyle said, you rejected the Brewers' proposal to change the zoning on the property, and this new request is for even higher density than before. So I'm not sure what has changed, other than he's got a little more property now, but it's essentially just one more backyard. I don't believe that the Brewers will suffer any financial loss. They knew this was R1A when they bought the properties. They haven't made us any promises on how they'll develop this land. In every past zoning request, they presented a plan that wasn't final. They refused to say whether or not they will get the zoning change and sell the property to someone else who will develop it, and that's what a lot of the residents and I believe, is that they will get the zoning change, not build this or any other thing they've shown us, but just sell it to someone who will develop it, and then we, the residents, will have no say in what happens after that. I wanted to get a show of hands of who in here from our neighborhood is here and against this plan. So I think most of us in the neighborhood, we are very united against this, and we hope that you will be as well. A couple of things that their development goes against in the Tyler Unified Development Code. Doesn't protect the promoter health, the safety, general welfare of the people of Tyler. There's only 33 homes total on Richmond Road. This would more than double the number of residents on Richmond Road. 35 units versus 35 current houses. So to say there's not going to be a traffic impact, I think is not true. It's 35 additional families driving up and down that road. Right next to the park and pool, children play. It's going to be dangerous for them. It's not going to enhance our quality of life. Again, affecting our park and pool, dangerous for children to play. It doesn't protect the character of our neighborhood. It's completely different than what the original developers planned and envisioned for the area. I've done lots of research on the history of the neighborhood. If any of you would like to see any of it, I'd be glad to provide it. Our park and pool was established 60 years ago. Our neighborhood has been around that long, and it's a treasure to the city of Tyler. It's operated at no taxpayer expense. All volunteers operate that park and pool, and it's a wonderful thing for Tyler. This is spot zoning. Doesn't belong in our neighborhood, and is really going to hurt, I think, the values of the homes in the area. Again, we've talked about that it doesn't ensure adequate air, light, privacy, access to the property. I believe this plan that's shown here just came out yesterday. We were shown a different plan, and I know that Mr. Brewer has tried to make some things on it to be better, but I'm still not sure that it's a safe area for children to play in and for fire trucks and utility vehicles to get in and out of. It's not going to enhance the public realm with trees or public gathering spaces. There's not very much play area. There's not a lot of trees. There's not a lot of yard in that plan. Doesn't promote natural resource conservation or environmentally responsible development practices. They've already clear cut a lot of the trees, and there's going to be a lot more cut down. Wildlife's been displaced, and the existing drainage area is going to be paved over. When the original street was planned back there, there was a drainage easement under Janelle Drive, and Janelle Drive was 32 feet wide, I believe. I don't see that drainage easement anywhere on this plat, and I don't see any provisions on this plat for any new existing drainage. Excuse me. Again, public services and utilities. As you know, this area of Tyler has had a lot of issues since more commercial developments have gone in on Old Bullard Road. In 2019, the city spent millions of dollars putting in a new drainage area under Old Bullard Road. And then last December, there was a cave-in. There was a giant sinkhole that opened up right in that exact same area where a sewer line, I believe, collapsed or failed and it eroded the area. I don't see that there's gonna be any new, better sewage facilities put in for this. And so this is gonna be existing strain and existing issues with the problems that we already have that I don't believe have been fully remediated and corrected. And then finally, I hate to bring this up, but I believe that developers are not complying with the proper P&Z approval processes. Two of the houses on that street, they have inserted clauses into the deeds of homeowners that they are not allowed to protest against this plan or any zoning request change. And that's just not the way that the system's supposed to work. Everyone should be able to speak freely and say whether or not they are against this plan, and at least two of the neighbors are not allowed to do that. So I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. King. Any questions for this lady? If not, thank you for your time and presence. Alicia Deason. Ms. Deason?
Good afternoon. My name's Alyssa Deason. My husband Doc and I live at 713 Barclay Drive. As a resident of the Idlewild community for the last 6 years, I'm very concerned by the prospect of the proposed zoning change before you. I respectfully and unapologetically come to you in absolute opposition of this proposal. Our family purchased in this neighborhood in part because of the uniqueness of this little pocket of Tyler, which goes back for over half a century. At the time, I couldn't have told you that the charm and character were due in part to it being zoned R1A, and I'm sad to say that I now know this. It's a shame that our neighborhood is having to fight so hard to protect our established community. Our beloved area is characterized by large lots and homeowners that know and care about one another. I think it's obvious from the feedback that this committee has received that we would like to keep it that way. The land in question can develop approximately 7 single-family homes without any rezoning, and that would be in keeping with the spirit on which this neighborhood was founded. I, like so many of my neighbors, am concerned that trying to cram 5 times that amount of homes into this space will create a cluster of issues, such as additional traffic concerns, noise, drainage issues, and strain on our outdated and inadequate sewer system. One of the few formal neighborhood organizations that we have is the Idlewild Neighborhood Pool and Club. Despite having a very important vote on this matter with it being next door, they have, for reasons we can only speculate on, decided to remain neutral. The last time this issue came up and we were allowed to give our input, it's my understanding that over 90% of the membership was against the last proposed changes. Given that this change is perceived as even worse for our neighborhood, we have no reason to believe that those numbers would be very far off of what they were with the last vote. While the pool board has unfortunately forfeited the option to adequately represent its members, I would respectfully ask that you take into consideration the feedback that was previously given by this large neighborhood organization.
Thank you, Ms. Deason. Any questions for Ms. Deason? Thank you for your time and presence here. Those are the only cards I have that show that people would like to speak, but are there others who maybe didn't sign up who would like to comment on this application? Yes, Ms. Roberts, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. I signed in and I thought that covered the card. I didn't see the card. Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie Roberts, 4520 Richmond Road. My husband Randy and I have lived in Idlewild for 33 years. Our home was built in 1964, and we are members and have been, I think, the entire time we've lived there, of the Neighborhood Pool Association. We have several objections to this change. First and foremost, we believe that it is contrary to points spelled out in Section 10-8 of Tyler's Unified Code. Going forward, our issues concern drainage, sewer, property values, traffic, safety, and the fact that it absolutely is not in keeping with our neighborhood. Drainage has been an issue in this neighborhood for years. As Carrie mentioned, the city has recently spent millions of dollars. It's better, but it's not fixed. And we had several retention ponds in the area. They've been paved over. This would be one of the last ones. And you know what happens when water runs over asphalt. It just runs and causes more problems. So we feel that we're looking at additional flooding. The current sewer system was designed for this neighborhood in the 60s. At that time, Overlord Road was a dirt road, and this sewer system was for our neighborhood. Since then, the buildings, the businesses on Overlord Road have tied into our system. We personally have had the sewer in our home. Several of our neighbors have. Now, I would be happy to tell you that the city now comes out and pumps regularly. So it's only happened once. But it is a real concern to add this many additional units and families. We are also concerned about property values and the value of the neighborhood. Rental property always affects the surrounding neighborhood. It doesn't matter how lovely it starts out. In the end, it's rental property, and it deteriorates, and it adversely affects the neighborhood. Traffic and safety in a family-oriented neighborhood is extremely important. We live on Richmond Road. I watch families and children every day up and down our street. There is a group of mothers that walk about 11 o'clock every morning. They have 3 strollers, they've got toddlers, and they have 2 dogs that walk with them. You add 35 to 70 cars up and down Richmond Road, and they won't be able to do that. Parents allow older siblings to take their younger siblings to the pool in the summer. That won't happen. This is a neighborhood that we all wish we had grown up in. When Randy and I moved in, our intent was to live there 3 to 5 years and build on a lot that we owned somewhere else. We sold our lot to stay there. When we remodeled, we looked at things and we decided to stay in Idlewild. You can't find neighborhoods like this. This is a neighborhood when you have COVID, chicken soup turns up on your front porch. You don't have neighborhoods like this anymore. So we really feel that this is not in keeping with the city plan, and it is certainly not in keeping with this area. And so we ask you to continue to deny this request. Thank you.
Ms. Roberts. Any questions for Stephanie Roberts? Are there others? Yes, sir. Gentleman on the front row.
Good afternoon. My name is Trey Brewer. I'm the applicant. I live at 4928 Richmond Road. It's the second house to the north up there. This is my backyard. First, I guess I want to address a couple of comments. The history of this, I purchased the house 2 doors to the north of me 3 years ago. And the plan was to sell the house and keep the backyard. And as part of that transaction, when I found an interested buyer, I told them about my plans in the backyard, and I wanted to make sure that they were comfortable with that before they purchased the property. And there was no financial consideration given at that time. I didn't lose a sale. Nobody backed out on me or anything like that. They were comfortable with what was being proposed in the backyard. The agreement was that they weren't going to protest that, and they're living up to that. After the last rezoning effort, former Mayor Hines suggested that I purchase the property to the south so that I could relocate the entrance gate next to the offices. And so I did that. And I did the same thing with that property. We sold it to our neighbors, and I wanted to make sure they knew what they were getting into. And so I told them about my plans, and I asked them if they would support something like that, and they said yes. There was no purchase price consideration given on that. didn't lose a sale. And so, from my experience with those two transactions, people knowing what could happen, I think that people are comfortable living in close proximity to what I'm proposing. So I just wanted to address that. I wanted you guys to understand the backstory on that. So to jump back to Mr. Kingma's comments about the Tyler First plan, and I think Mr. Reed's questions about what would be a good zoning here. So I've been scratching my head. I'm trying to figure out what a good zoning would be. Is it commercial? I don't think residential houses need to be back up to commercial. I struck that one off the list. Industrial, it's not industrial property. Is it single family residential? I don't think that, well, I'll go ahead and say it. There isn't a precedent. I've asked Kyle 2 weeks ago to find a precedent for developing the city, P&Z, and city council requiring a property owner to develop single family residential detached housing against existing commercial property. And he searched. He's really good at looking at the zoning cases in Tyler. He hasn't found it the last 2 weeks. I've searched. I haven't found a precedent for that. And so I'm striking R1A off the list of what's an appropriate zoning there. R1B is single family detached housing. So that's off the list. And so you're left with R1D, you're left with PMF, RMF zoning. And so that's how I've arrived at where I am today. There is no precedent for requiring single family detached houses against existing commercial property. What there is a precedent for is what I'm proposing. I would like to show some pictures if I could. So it may be hard to see this. While I couldn't find a precedent for the city and P&Z requiring single-family detached houses against existing commercial property, it was really easy to find a precedent for approving townhomes in a single to medium, in the low to medium Tyler First comprehensive plan area. The circles here, you've got Cambridge Drive, 8406 Cambridge Drive. You've got the Pinecrest property that we all just reviewed. My proposal is very similar to how that lays out adjacent to commercial property and residential property, and that was approved. All of these were approved in the last 10 years by this body. We've got Roy Road, Amberwood Townhomes, Kennedy Drive. All of these are between 7 and 10 units per acre. I would respectfully disagree with Mr. Kingman on the 11 units an acre. I think I'm at 10. I don't think that little sliver to the north, the dogleg, is taken into consideration in that acreage calculation. So I think I'm at 10, which falls in line with the precedents that this body has already approved previously. I'd like to take a minute to talk about character and compatibility. This proposed zoning will not change the character of Idlewild. It won't change it because it's not visible from the street. What you're going to see from Richmond Road is a neatly landscaped gated entrance. I've decided to gate the entrance between the office dumpster and the first single family house. All of these will be tucked away behind my house and my neighbors' houses. Compatibility. So this property is tucked between office property. It's adjacent. It's across the street from a house that's used as an office, as a business right now. It's adjacent to Taco Bueno restaurant and to Dakota's restaurant and that shopping center and Southside Furniture. It's a transition zone. It's a buffer zone. It's not in the middle of Idlewild. If I was trying to propose this on Dorchester, somewhere in the middle of all of Idlewild, that wouldn't make sense. But the view from my front yard is much different than the view of a lot of folks' front yards in the middle of the neighborhood. When I was making the decision to buy my property, nobody gave me what is the character of Idlewild? I never saw that anywhere. It's subjective. And so I feel like there's room for several different kinds of areas. Well, there's several different types of areas in Idlewild. And when I was deciding to buy my property, I walked out the front door and looked around. And from the mailbox, I can see a nearly 200 unit true apartment complex from my front yard. The density there is 21 units an acre. So much higher than what I'm proposing at 10 units an acre. That's been there for 50 years. And that was present when everybody in this neighborhood bought their property. And so by everybody buying their property here, we're all saying, whether we want to admit it or not, we're comfortable living in plain sight of those apartments. And I guess to explain a little bit further, I want to lock myself down into exactly this site plan and this style and character of house. The single-story building up to on the top is from Cambridge Drive. When I was driving around trying to figure out what I wanted to build, those seemed the best quality, the nicest in town. And so I did a little bit of research. I knocked on some doors. I asked, what kind of people live in these? Who are your neighbors? I talked to a lady. She said she's a nurse. Other nurses, other healthcare folks live in that neighborhood. There's police officers. There's retired couples. Another person I talked to said there's homeowners that are in a transitional state, whether they're sold their home waiting to build their dream home, whether they've had they're homeowners that have had changing family situations. They're people. They're not anybody to be scared about. I couldn't find a two-story building that I felt was nice enough in Tyler, a two-story townhome that was nice enough. So I found this elevation of what I would like to build. I'd like to lock myself down into the roof pitch, the building materials, the colors. And so that's something that wasn't present the first couple of times around. You guys didn't know what the buildings were going to look like. You didn't know if it was going to be gated or not. And so just want to share that with you. This is the view of the entrance of the property. The top view where the tree is there, right next to the long roof line of the offices, and next to the dumpster enclosure that the trash man comes 5 a.m. Bangs on the trash truck, and everybody wakes up. I would like to note that the office property that is responsible for about half the protest is an office property, and they made their decision to build right across the street from a 20-unit an acre complex, and I'm only proposing 10 again. So I'd like for you guys to take that into consideration when you're making your decision. I also had to consider when I was moving in about the traffic. Richmond Road appears to be a main part of the neighborhood, a main street. I had to think, well, am I comfortable with my three girls and wife on strollers and scooters walking down Richmond Road? Is that safe? And I thought, well, this road is very wide. It's maybe 35 feet wide. There's plenty of room for my family to walk and cars to pass safely. So those are some things that I had to consider when I was purchasing in the neighborhood. Some residents have talked about the pool, and I just want to make sure you guys understand what the pool is and what it isn't. The pool, you don't have to be a member of the pool when you join the neighborhood. You don't have to pay dues. You don't have to join it. In fact, the pool is open membership up to anybody that wants to join. You can live in an apartment complex. You can live in townhomes. You can live in a nursing home, and you can be a member of the pool. It's not an exclusive organization. picture of what the pool looks like. It's 60 years old. It was built right on the property line. Just want you guys to see that if you guys haven't seen that in some time. Another issue is traffic. A lot of folks have brought up traffic, and I feel like that is the one thing that's changing about this property that affects the rest of the neighborhood. Just comparing the two real quick, they're both residential. There's no tree preservation requirement on the property currently. There's rental properties in the neighborhood. There's no requirement not to rent the property. What is changing is the density, and how that impacts the neighborhood is traffic. And Cameron Williams, I think he's here. He's reviewed the traffic analysis that I did. I used the city's numbers of how many cars per peak hour this will impact. And what we came to was one additional car every 12 minutes versus what can currently be developed on the property. So currently, I can build 12 single-family houses, R1A, on that property. And so when you do the comparison, it's one extra car every 12 minutes. It's not a lot. Again, Cameron's here he's reviewed those numbers. If you guys have questions about it, I'd love for you to talk with him. So, I also want to give you guys an idea of the style of the entrance, what's going to be visible from Richmond Road. It's not going to be a simple ornamental iron gate. It's going to be something that's ornate with stone columns. It's going to look nice. It's going to be landscaped. It's not going to be an eyesore. This gate is going to be located maybe 150 feet off the road, even with the backyard fences of the neighbors. So it won't even be up in your face as you're walking along. So, like Mr. Keeman talked about, I did have a neighborhood meeting, and I did pass out the last time around. I understood I needed to do a better job communication-wise. I passed out 5 times more flyers this time throughout all the neighborhoods so that everybody could have their chance to talk. It's important to me that the neighbors understand what I'm proposing, and I'm trying to lock myself down to give everybody some comfort of knowing exactly what's going to be built. And as I've been listening, I've met in people's homes that would talk to me. I heard a couple more concerns that I wanted to make changes to, and we've heard about the sewer. One change that I'm making is instead of the sewer line coming up to Richmond Road, the sewer is now going to drain directly to Old Bullard. So it won't go through or utilize any of the neighborhood sewer lines. The second thing that I've heard is the storm drainage. The low point on this property, there's already a drain from when Janelle Drive was platted through here. There's a storm sewer pipe that funnels all the water on this property to the commercial property to the east. So it's going to funnel from there under Old Bullard. That the storm sewer was updated in 2019. The third concern that I heard that people kept bringing up was when Harley did his development and when Mr. Shelton did his development, there were several site plan differences from what actually got built to what was approved by this body. And so I think it's an easy thing for me to do is to designate a couple of folks in the neighborhood to simultaneously submit construction plans to those folks so that while I'm submitting construction plans to the building inspectors and P&Z to ensure compliance, I want to make sure that what I'm proposing gets built and there's no changes. So those folks would have time to review and to speak to the city to make sure there's no inadvertent changes. So I hope you hear I've made several changes since the last time around. I've taken time to go by these developments. I've given the neighbors similar developments to go by what I'll be proposing so they can understand and see what I see. They're peaceful communities, and that's why I think that it's appropriate zoning for this property. The last thing that I would like to say, important decisions in our city need to be made rooted in facts and based on the rules that we've chosen to live by, and not by emotion and fear of what if. Where I'm giving you the facts, I hope you're listening to the facts. There's folks that rightfully so may be scared, that they're giving you potential fears to consider. I would hope that we can make common sense, fact-based decisions in Tyler. And common sense, fact-based decisions in Tyler. Guys, the sky's not falling with this development. I would ask that you consider the unique property and its location between multiple types of zonings, and understanding that there's no precedent for requiring single-family detached houses in the city that I could find or Kyle could find. These are called townhomes. They're not called apartments. There is a difference between them. These townhomes all have ground floor entry. They all have backyards. They all have garages. They all have driveways. Ground floor entry, garages, driveways, backyards. That sounds a lot like a house to me, not an apartment. That's why I'm proposing that. It's the only thing missing is a side yard, and I don't think that our neighborhood character is defined by side yards. To wrap up, I would ask you to consider the precedent of forcing property owners to construct single-family detached housing adjacent to commercial property. There is not a precedent for acquiring single-family housing against commercial existing property, but there is a precedent, and I've showed you the examples of approving this type of zoning here. And you guys have done it before. I'd ask you to do it again. If you have questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Mr. Brewer, thank you for your time and presence.
I do have a question, Mr. Brewer. So you're saying your dilemma is because commercial is on the east side, you weren't comfortable with doing single family. But it's single family on the west side, you felt more comfortable doing multifamily.
Townhomes.
Townhomes?
Yes.
Okay. And so what is the issue primarily, even though the precedence hasn't been set with single family next to commercial?
Yeah.
What is the main issue?
The issue is no developer has chosen to do that before. The market's not ready for it. Any other house that gets single-family detached house that gets built next to commercial property, I'm competing against single-family detached houses that are backing up to something less dense than commercial property.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. I think maybe it's time to Jimmy.
Yeah, I have a few questions. Mr. Brewer, really what you're talking about is transitional zoning. And I've heard the term spot zoning as well, which is not really, at least in my experience, what this is. This is more of a transitional zoning, and that's what you're trying to prove. Is that there's typically a logical transition from industrial to commercial to multifamily and townhomes to single family small to single family larger, and it kind of works that way. And that's what you're saying, I think. But I do have a few additional questions. So do you plan to be the developer of this property to 100% completion?
Currently, yes.
Okay. Do you have any idea why the pool board decided to be neutral from your perspective?
Yeah, so the pool board, the last go around, when I was trying to do the entrance up to the north, it was important to everyone that we left a buffer between what I was proposing to do and the green space, the pool, the tennis courts. And so I agreed to keep that buffer. Back in October, I came home from lunch and saw a skid steer tearing down all the trees and landscaping between my property and theirs. And so they came about 50 feet onto my property and tore down the buffer that I was trying to keep to hide the potential development from the rest of the neighborhood. And so over the course of a couple of back and forths, we're trying to figure out a way to rectify that. And so that's why they're not opposing this right now.
Okay, so it had to do with your negotiation for them coming onto your property and demolishing some of the buffer that they requested or that you had,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's also some thought that the folks that live here would be ideal candidates to be members, and so the pool board tells me that they need as many members as possible.
Okay.
So they see a little bit of benefit there.
Based upon your research, and I'm assuming because an engineer has prepared your plan, have you found that your property was ever intended to be a detention pond or detention area?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay. I think I have two more questions. Probably the first one would be, what is your plan for the property that is adjacent to the pool that's not described in this
Yeah, good question.
site plan?
That has been left out of the presentation. The intended change is no change. It needs to be R1A property. It's next to R1A single family housing, and that should be single family housing.
So you plan to either sell or develop that as a single family home?
That would be down the road, yes.
Okay. Mr. Brewer, have you analyzed what an R1A development or a PUR development with R1A setbacks would look like? Because it seems like that the general consensus is that that's something that the neighborhood would be satisfied with. And so what was in your analysis of that? I know you said that went off the table in the first part of your statement, but what's the analysis? Can you dive a little bit deeper into that?
Sure.
Particularly?
Sure. So if you put your street down the middle, just a R1A street is 60 foot wide, and you're only going to have enough room to build a 24, 27 foot wide house. That's about as big as a double wide on either side, with the 25 foot front setback and 25 foot rear setback. So I don't feel like a house as wide as a double wide would be a good fit right here. So that's the primary issue.
But you could do R1A with R1A setbacks in a PUR type of zone where you could have private streets, and so you could decrease. I think there's potential there, or at least in my mind, it seems like that there could be some potential there where there could be a win-win with the neighborhood and then also with you in regards to something that would be single family. But of course, like Kyle has said, that's really on you to figure out. But it appears, and I don't know, but it appears that, I know you've already tried that with some R1B and then PUR aspects as well. But I want to bring that up as potential, even though I completely understand your thought process in transitional zoning as well. Okay, I believe that's all that I have.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Mr. Brewer, now, these were all the backyards of the 4 existing homes, correct? The pictures you showed of the other units, like off Cambridge and stuff, that you call precedent, those weren't backyards taken from a neighborhood and converted. They were private property. And so it's really not a precedent to say that this is the same. This isn't apples to apples with those. So I'd just like to point that out.
Sure, I hear you. They're not backyards anymore. It's changed. Yeah, I guess that's what I'd say, but I hear you.
Yeah, and when was it that you sold the houses where you put the restrictions into the owners not being able to protest any type of development?
2020 and maybe 2021.
Okay, so this high-density 35 unit was just brought about and created in the last few months. So they didn't know that you're doing 35 units. At the most, they thought you were doing what it was zoned for.
No, I was transparent with them and told them, like, properties to go look at of townhomes. Yeah, I would disagree with that.
Okay, so when you first sold it to them, you were then looking at 10 homes or 12 homes in 21 and 22, when you
It was
came before
15 or
this body,
16.
10 homes or 12 homes, whatever it was. And now it's 35, and they don't have, that's the point the folks are making, they don't have an opportunity to speak out against it because it's tripled the density here.
It would be double, but yes.
Okay, double, triple? Sounds like triple from 12 to 35.
Well, I showed them the properties that they could drive by, and I think they're comfortable with that.
But we won't be able to hear that from them, whether they're comfortable or not,
Okay,
because they can't speak out, right?
okay.
Just want to make that clear.
Mr. Brewer, thank you for your time and presence. We have some other folks who would like to speak. This lady here is first. Good to state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Can you hear me well? I tend to have a soft voice.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you hear me better if I get this close to the microphone? Because I have a soft voice and I
Yes,
want
ma'am.
you to hear me easily. My name is Mitzi Rusk, and I live at 609 Barclay here in Idlewild. Thank you for your time. I will try to use it wisely. It sounds like the petitioner is making a case against R1A's success in that area. Everyone here in opposition is a reason why R1A would be a success. We have realtors in Idlewild who would be happy to demonstrate that R1A could be a success. The homes in the backyard that he's planning to put up against the rental units would be R1A homes backing up. There is no precedent that the R1A must be changed, I would respectfully suggest. Idlewild is the precedent. We are a green space with a heart in Tyler. Many of us came here seeking what Idlewild has to offer. It really is unique. I don't know how many community pools there are in Tyler, but there are not many. It's also a sports field where children, parents, and grandparents come and cherish. I support the pool and my neighbors. I'm here to respectfully urge you to vote no on any zone change for this 3.3 acres. You might deem that that's harsh. I compliment the planning and zoning on the new loft apartments downtown. That was the right decision, at the right time, at the right place. Idlewild, I suggest, is not. Let's discuss the topic. Profit or preservation of a good thing. Keeping this density and higher property values are good for the city. Single detached housing can successfully be accomplished there if building needs to happen. I'm sure P&Z would help with meeting those requirements. Tyler is unique that we want to be first in a lot of things. If Idlewild needs to be first, that R1A housing can be kept and succeed, we can do it, and we can support the petitioner in that. This plan directly opposes the mission of Tyler's Unified Development Code, as you heard Kerry King speak. And remember, we're not saying no completely. We realize there needs to be a win-win in our neighborhood. But the petitioner has also not made any commitment to stay in our neighborhood, and we have. We will be there. There is enough space to build the homes I mentioned. Kyle informally gave me an estimate of 13 or so homes. Any more than this would be like sardines in a can. This proposal is landlocked, sandwiched in between commercial and homeowners, R1A homeowners, I might add, backyards, except for one driveway. The other sites and addresses that he gave us to drive by are not in this unique situation. They're not comparable, in my opinion. The usual here is one home on 1 acre. I know Mark Kennedy in the zone is one of the voters you see that voted against this proposal. This one is for, of course, 35 rentals on the 3.3 acres. The rentals for us are a roll of the dice. The apartments the petitioner referred you to are across Rice Road. We don't casually walk across Rice Road, and I bet you don't either. Our goal here is it to assist one person with these profits at the expense of many. Wouldn't it be proper to stay in character with why we bought Idlewild? How are you going to recreate us if we disappear? You know that we don't have apartments demolished and have R1A housing built. It just doesn't work that way. We know why we're an asset to the petitioner. However, as I mentioned, with our pool and sports field, we depend on this in our area. It gives us health and sanity. It goes beyond the pocketbooks. There must be some benefit to this proposed rezoning, but I would have to be the developer to know what it is. Of larger concern is the overnight transfer of power and influence away from owner-occupied residents that have been stewards of this neighborhood for generations and into the hands of whoever owns this strip of property. We are your friends. We are taxpayers. We are volunteers. And we are voters. I appreciate your time and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Rusk. Any questions for Ms. Rusk? If not, sir, you've been...
I actually have questions for Mr. Brewer, but since his time's done, I'm good.
Okay. Are there others here who would like to speak? Yes, sir. Someone in the back. Good afternoon, folks. How's everybody?
As well.
Mark Stout, 702 Dorchester Drive, Idlewild neighborhood. I've been there over 12 years, me and my family. This is about the facts. And I believe the facts have not been brought out honestly by Mr. Brewer. He gave us a paper at last Tuesday's meeting. He gave us 4 properties that he showed y'all, I believe, parts of them. I want to make one thing very clear. None of these 4 properties do you enter or exit into a residential area. And Richmond Road is lined with R1A residential homes. And as a fact of that he doesn't believe that homes should back up to a commercial property, his did. When he bought it, it backed up all the way to the wall. Went clear back to where the wall sits right now for Taco Bueno and a different commercial. So he had no problem buying a home that went back to the commercial wall, and I wouldn't either. Wouldn't bother me. So selling homes in that area is not going to be a problem. The density is going to be a problem. And it's going to be a problem for everybody, including Mr. Brewer, who I don't believe will stay in the neighborhood anyway. But the major concerns I have, first of all, is the additional traffic density due to at least 70 to 80 more vehicles. In rentals, you got to be kidding me. 35 rentals could bring easily over 100 cars. With the overflow parking being Richmond Road, these folks will have no choice but to park out on Richmond Road overnight, and then have to walk out possibly through somebody's yard to get to their vehicle in the morning. Not to mention the folks that have to cut through the neighborhood because of the traffic this will cause on Richmond Road. Mr. Brewer himself cuts through the neighborhood going to work every morning himself. Right up Dorchester Drive or one of the others. Right now, today, with no extra cars in that neighborhood. The lack of accessibility for autos, emergency vehicles, refuse trucks, delivery trucks, and construction equipment to safely enter and exit this 3.35 acre property with a single driveway both in and out. And they can say what they want. I've operated some pretty large vehicles. It's going to be pretty difficult to go in there and turn around a garbage truck. It's not very safe. They do back up, they do come around, they have backup cameras, I understand all that, still not safe. There's no way in and out except one. And to come in there with I'd hate to be up inside of one of those and need an EMT. I mean, they can get in and out pretty good, but still, to get in there when there's an emergency is not gonna be as simple as it's been depicted. Also, we were given this list of similar properties for, not one property, folks, was similar. Not one. In fact, the one out yonder at, the one in Shadow Oaks, it's in an unincorporated area of Smith County. There is no zoning. So Shadow Oaks shouldn't even count in this thing, because we're not talking about Idlewild, we're talking about unincorporated area here. And I don't think that's fair to bring that up as far as putting that into a similar situation. Not to mention, if you go a little farther, I don't want to take up too much of y'all's time here, but these are issues that need to be brought out. They really do. Everything he showed you was a single-story duplex and did not have anywhere near the density we're talking here with 35 units on 3.35 acres, including a roadway, including parking, and they claim lawns. I can tell you where everybody's gonna be. They're gonna be out on other properties and out in the street, over at the pool area. That's gonna be the major playground for whoever's over there. And that's fine if that's what everybody agrees to. But I have an issue I want to say right now, why the pool board is not here. And the pool board is not here because Mr. Brewer has threatened them. And I can tell you, I went to the property myself, and anybody in here would like to go, check it out. There are 28 trees, at least 8 inches in diameter and up, still standing on his side of that property line, and not one stump. There are no stumps. What was taken out by the tree company, I don't know who they were, was brush. Most of it was dead. I have pictures, if y'all like them, I'll email them to you. I went over and checked it myself. So I think we need to get the facts straight here. Let's all be honest with each other, and if we are, I believe, when it's all said and done, I ask you right here, right now, to please leave this as an R1A zoning for this property, because I can firmly believe Mr. Brewer can build whatever he needs as far as an R1A goes, and everybody's gonna be just fine, and so will he. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there others? There's a gentleman in the back.
Well, thank y'all for listening to our hearts and our wishes.
Could you state your name?
I'm Mark Kennedy. Should I go here? Mr. Chairman and board members, when you think of Idlewild, you don't think of quadplexes and duplexes, really. You think of Idlewild. It's like a bunch of single-family homes on large lots that have been established since the 60s, you know, and whoever, if this zoning gets changed, whoever buys this zoning can do whatever they want. Am I right? So, I mean, if it gets changed, it's a slippery slope. I went up and down the streets with my friends, and everybody is livid. You saw how many people raise their hands? We can bring more if you need them. Everybody is livid. Everybody knows about this, everybody hates it, and nobody wants it. It's not good for the neighborhood. I asked the developer what good it was, and he said, maybe you can have some more friends. Like, I have friends, you know? But you're also gonna have more traffic, more noise, more flooding, more dangerous congestion, and less green space, less drainage, and lower property values. My house across, I've been here since 81, but I look much younger. My house is close to an acre. The development area of those 3 backyards is 3 acres. Richmond Road has 33 houses. He wants to put 35 more houses on it. You double, we ask at the meeting, how many people have 2 cars? Everybody has 2 cars, so that's 70 cars. How many people have friends, Everybody has friends. So that's like you said, it could be 100 cars, and where are you gonna put them? And, well, the R1A, you guys already know this stuff. R1A is for single-family housing on large lots, intended to accommodate development of a detached, single-family housing on large lots. That's what it needs to be and stay. Idlewild neighborhood is a vast, proud group of established R1A homes. All the lots in our area are over 1,600 square feet. The last time he proposed 6,000 square feet lots, and now he's doing a fraction of that. He said he wants to negotiate, but that's twice as bad as last time. Y'all know there's legal arguments in the Tyler City Unified Development Code and the Future Use Land Guide. I don't need to read all that. That's kind of a lot of numbers. This is and has been a single-family R1A neighborhood of houses for almost 60 years. It needs to stay that way. This has been denied 2 previous occasions. Once you start downgrading, like I said, and you guys saw what happened on the first request today, they're going from something to commercial, so it's going down still. Every time it goes down, it can keep going. I'm a member of the pool and I support it. The last time this happened, before there was intimidations, it was 91.7 the first time they did a poll, and 96.8, 96.6 the second time. 56 out of 58 that were polled. They didn't poll this time because somebody mowed the grass too far. And the last time the P&Z met on this issue, where his request was denied, the staff recommendations from page 2 state the proposed density is not consistent with the existing character of large lot single family that was originally established for the area. Also, there have been not any re-subdivisions of the original lots below 12,000 square feet, 500 square feet. Development of this property would visually impact the screening of the Idlewild pool, which is an important component of the neighborhood and long-established character. We have no problem with the developer developing homes matching the zoning he knowingly bought into, R1A. Anything more would not fit the neighborhood. It's much less the future land guide or the City of Tyler Unified Development Code. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Any questions from Mr. Kennedy? We can stay here tomorrow if you want, or if many of you feel like issues have been addressed. I don't want to cut off anybody. That's not my habit. If there are others here who are moved by the Spirit, just yes, ma'am. There's somebody in the back.
Gazelle, and I live at 5012 Haley Lane, and I just wanted to give another perspective on this situation. Because I live at Haley Lane, and I don't know if y'all can bring up the zoning, the blue little pod, I live back up against that nice little piece of property. And because I'm fighting for them, because this thing was zone changed back in 2002. And I wasn't living there. We bought our house in 2012. And the property was sold, and it was sold to a person that is now building on there. And we can't do anything about it. And it's a business.
So we had a piece of property that we tried to buy from the man, but he didn't want to sell to us. He was asking an ungodly amount of money for that piece of property. And it was sold to a man, and he is building, and I don't even know how the drainage is awful on it right now. And these people are speaking exactly what they're saying, that if this zone change gets done, even if he doesn't do what he wants to do, he could sell it later on to whoever he wants to and do whatever he wants to with that piece of property, or the person that buys it. I know just for speaking on this right now. So I love my little house, even though we're on the corner of Howling and Rice Road, and it is a drag race right now, y'all. It is a drag race. So I'm fighting for them. I'm fighting for our neighborhoods, and I'm here to stay. So I appreciate y'all listening to me.
Thank you for your time and presence. Yes, sir. Mr. Kennedy, this is your. Yeah. I didn't say that.
I've been kicked out of better places than, no, I haven't. Worse places, no. So Montoya, this guy, I usually tell dad jokes when I have a microphone, so it's kind of weird for me. That green area there, that green, can you go back to the first one? Not that one.
The aerial, I think.
Yeah, that's the guy. That, the green area that he's trying to develop, that top, very top house there that's enclosed by it, that's Montoya's house. I know him. He's against it, but he can't say anything because of that clause in his contract. He's afraid to say something. I know for a fact he's against it. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. Are there others? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Terry Lumley. I live at 4910 Halley in Baker Heights, and I speak on behalf of the residents in Baker Heights. We're 51 homes. We adjoin the Idlewild neighborhood. We're all invested in the neighborhood. This is not just revenue for us. We understand Mr. Brewer's going to be moving to Flint and leaving our area holding the bag. What I'd like to say is, I know we've discussed all the issues, stormwater, traffic noise, property values, but we are also, neighborhood preservation is huge to us. Spot zoning is what's happening here. They're proposing to double the density of an established neighborhood, setting a dangerous precedent for the residents of the city of Tyler. This would open up a can of worms for many neighborhoods in Tyler to allow dense multifamily use into a single-family neighborhood. And I'm just going to read from my notes that I took last night, or wrote down last night. Several years ago, the property located at 617 Rice Road attempted to rezone excess land into single-family units with a secondary ingress and egress point on Timberwild. While the density fit with the current R1A neighborhood, it was determined by the council that it wasn't a good fit for the residents of this neighborhood. This proposal is very similar to that, except it doubles the density. So, if the previous request wasn't good for the neighborhood, this one definitely is not good for the residents of this neighborhood or the adjoining neighborhoods. We understand that Tyler needs more housing, but let's do this the right way, not by cramming multifamily units in the single-family neighborhood property owners' backyards.
Thank you for your time and presence. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you for your consideration.
Commissioners, Mr. Brewer, I'm going to give you the right, as the applicant, I'm going to give you the right to close. Please keep it short.
Hey, I'll just ask, I'm scratching my head trying to figure out what the right zoning is. I've heard some comments from you guys. if you guys have some suggestions for me, I would welcome them and take them back and try to repropose something that may be more amenable to you guys.
I don't think we'll have a suggestion at this time. Sure. I'd be surprised.
Okay.
Commissioners, I think we've adequately explored this issue, at least for today. Is there a person who'd like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we deny PD 23-008.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded to deny this zoning change. Is there discussion? If not, Sheila, would you
Yes,
call the
sir.
roll, please?
Pamela Phoenix,
Aye.
Jimmy Reed,
Aye.
John Landis,
Aye.
Lloyd Nichols,
Aye.
Chairman Hudson.
Aye. The zoning application is denied. At this point, I always say y'all can stay if you want to watch good government in action. If not, you're free to leave.
Can we recess?
And we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commission's back in session. All the commissioners are here. Caleb?
All right.
Z23 to 003.
I hope everyone enjoyed their little break there. We'll try to get through these next. We have a couple more left, so we'll get through these pretty quick.
Do what you can. Do what you can.
This next zone change is a zone change request from R1A Single Family Residential to RPO Restricted Professional Office District, located along New Copeland Road and Dolores Street, as well as Chadwick Place as well. The adjacent properties to the north and to the west are zoned R1A, single family residential, and are developed with single family homes. The adjacent property to the east is zoned PUR, planned unit residential, and are currently undeveloped, although there is, I think they've built their clubhouse sort of main center for the development, but no homes there yet. And then the adjacent property to the south is zoned RPO and is currently undeveloped land. The applicant is proposing to develop this property with a medical office facility. The future land use guide identifies the property as single family, medium, low density. This request would amend the future land use guide to be office. And this is the property. As you can see, the kind of portion to the east, like I said, there's no home developed there yet. That's the top right picture. That bottom left picture is the property directly to the south that is zoned RPO, which hasn't been developed. And then the rest of the single family there in that area. Okay, so as I mentioned, the applicant is proposing to develop the properties with low impact medical office facilities. RPO zoning allows for most types of medical offices, but generally restricts the number of physicians that can operate there in any given building. The adjacent property to the south is zoned RPO, and that was done in 2002, although it's currently undeveloped. And then that property you can see to the northeast, which I believe is developed with I think it's a banking or a lending company. I think it's some kind of financial institution. That was rezoned in 2001 from, I believe, also a residential zoning district. Of the 16 notices that were mailed out, we received 4 notices that were in favor of the proposed zone change. We don't have it marked on the map. I know at least 3 of them are the 3 properties here along Chadwick Place. And then the 4th, I believe, is, I think maybe this property that doesn't show as a lot and block. I think it just barely clips. But the properties that are directly adjacent are in favor, although they did return their notices as being in favor with conditions. Those that returned their notice all had some form of saying that they were in favor but wanting to restrict access only to New Copeland Road, that no new access would be onto, that the property would not be accessed through Chadwick Place or Dolores Street. Speaking with other departments, I believe that we would allow access off of New Copeland, or we could allow access off of New Copeland, but the development would have to essentially have shared access there on New Copeland for their development. If there's multiple buildings or
multiple lots.
Correct, yeah. They would have to access it off of New Copeland through a shared access there. But staff, as far as we're aware at this point, wouldn't require access to come off of Chadwick or Dolores. Because the zoning is a straight zoning RPO, that obviously can't be enforced with that zoning. Just mentioning that it is possible for them to only have access off of New Copeland. So as I mentioned, those 16, 4 returned in favor, none were returned in opposition. Staff has performed a technical review of the request and finds that it is consistent with the approval criteria, and staff recommends approval of the zone change.
Thank you, Caleb. Any questions for Caleb?
So Caleb, just to confirm, we can't enforce in a straight zoning case that there wouldn't be any access off of Chadwick or Dolores?
That's correct.
Is that right? So it'd have to go to some kind of planned district with a,
With a site plan
with
or a narrative.
a narrative of some form. Do we know whether the applicant's here?
Yes.
Sorry.
Any other questions for Cody? I don't have any cards on this item. Is someone here who would like to speak? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Commission. Zach Clark, MHS Planning Design, 212 West 9th Street. I'm here representing the applicant, and I can say we understand the conditions on those letters of approval or of support, and we are open to limiting access as much as we can, but we'll have all that stuff finalized when we apply for permitting. But we are open to that.
Okay.
Open to changing the zoning to a planned zoning with the narrative?
Sorry, we were okay with keeping it RPO as we have it on here, but limiting access as much as we can to just New Copeland Road.
Okay. But not eliminating access off of Chadwick and Dolores?
Correct. We won't know that until we apply for permitting and the city reviews our site plan, for sure.
All right, any other questions? Are there others here who'd like to speak on this application, for or against? If not, is there a commissioner like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion to approve Z23-003.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve this. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Or aye?
Aye.
Sorry.
So there are two no votes and 3 aye votes. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Item's approved. Next is Z23-004, Jimmy Needham Senior.
This is a zone change request from C1 Light Commercial District to C2 General Commercial District, located along southwest loop 323. This is directly north of the Bellwood development. It's all planned commercial district. This property, they are requesting the zone change to develop the property with a motorcycle dealership, which is not permitted in C1. A majority of those properties, as you can see, with the exception of the kind of single-family residential that it backs up to, right there along the loop are primarily developed either as M1 industrial property or like what's coming into the south, that will be general commercial. The properties that are zoned C1 directly across the street are currently restaurants, I believe. All of those properties are restaurants. So the properties to the north and some to the east are zone M1, light industrial, also zone C1, light commercial. To the south is zone PCD, planned commercial, which that portion there is intended to be commercial development along Loop 323. I don't remember exactly, but I believe that this use would be permitted in that planned commercial district if it was further to the south. And then to the west is zone R1A, single-family residential, and RMH, manufactured home residential district. But it's currently developed with a single-family house. The request is consistent with the future land use guide, which identifies this as being a mixed-use center. This is the property currently, that whole area there is really undeveloped. Okay, as I mentioned, the applicant's requesting the zone change to allow for the motorcycle dealership, which would be permitted under C2 general commercial. The general commercial is generally consistent for that area, really with the exception of this one lot there that's zoned for light commercial. Of the 8 notices that were sent out, none were received in favor or in opposition to the request. Staff has performed a technical review and finds that it is consistent with the approval criteria, and staff would recommend approval of the zone change request.
Thank you, Ken. Any questions for city staff? If not, are there persons here who'd like to speak on this item for or against? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Scott Mercial. I'm the general contractor for
this client. My client, I built 3 motorcycle dealerships for him already. He has purchased Lone Star Harley that is currently already here. He owns Paris Harley Davidson also. As you know, Lone Star Harley's been here since 1964. In the negotiations of buying Lone Star Harley here, Harley Davidson required us to build a new facility within 36 months. We're already there 1 year since the buyout, so we have 24 months to build the facility. Well, they actually brought a team of to analyze the area, and they gave us an area to pick from. That's the reason we picked this location there on the loop. So we're just trying to get into our zoning change to meet the criteria so we can build this new dealership from the ground up. It's a concept store. Harley Davidson's actually designed it themselves. So it's not either going to be the only store in America that looks like this, or it's going to be the new store look for every Harley Davidson dealership in the United States. So pretty good benefit for Tyler. So, any questions?
Thank you. Any questions for this gentleman?
Did you say it was replacing the East Loop location or in addition to?
No, it's actually replacing it. It's going to be a ground up facility.
Okay. Thanks for your time and presence. Are there others who'd like to speak on this item for and against? If not, does your commissioner like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Z23-004.
Is there a second? Second. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Items approved. That brings us to ZA 23002, United Development Code. Kyle?
Okay, so this is part of our biannual updates to the Unified Development Code. We had a number of proposals and items that needed to be clarified or modified in the UDC. And so the process for that is we do have a Unified Development Code Review Committee that reviews these items and makes a recommendation for approval or reconsideration. So I'm going to talk about some of these items that have been recommended for amendments to the UDC. So the first item is relating to the 2021 Master Street Plan. This what you have before you is it comes from the Tyler First Chapter 10 Transportation and Circulation. Tyler First being the comprehensive plan for Tyler, and so one of the goals is to improve travel within Tyler with new road extensions as needed, and some of those policies are to adopt a master street plan, also to ensure local connectivity standards, and so those are really implemented through the Unified Development Code as development occurs, that there's I guess the preservation or reservation of right-of-way for future streets, and also construction of those streets or those connections throughout the city. And so the master street plan is a long-range master transportation plan. The intent is to provide or serve as a guide for future street development in Tyler, as well as the 5-mile ETJ or extraterritorial jurisdiction. Also, it's intended to plan for the orderly and expansion of the roadway system at minimum cost as the need for improvement arises. The UDC again implements the plan through its subdivision and street design standards. And previously, we've had master street plans in 1985, 2005, the most recent one in 2012, and now the one that's what was actually approved by the Tyler Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, the MPO. They adopted this plan that was developed by Walter P. Moore and Associates back in 2020. They approved the plan back in 2021, and so the city has not yet adopted the plan for implementation purposes, and so that's what we're here today, is that kind of takes place through the Unified Development Code and the referencing of the adopted plan. I'll make the last point there is, the master street plan is not an engineer's study of proposed routes. It is a plan for future rights of way, and so there is a degree of, you know, flexibility in that, but generally the idea is that the streets that are shown there are intended for long-range transportation planning and reservation of corridors for that purpose. And so, like I mentioned, the city has not yet adopted the 2021 Master Street Plan, and so the city put together a review group to review the map, Master Street Plan map, and then also the cross sections for proposed streets, and just to try to make a recommendation on, you know, how the city would adopt the plan if there's any adjustments to proposed routes, given any firsthand or that more knowledge or some knowledge that the city review group would have on any existing constraints or other feasibility factors. And so, so what we have here is the master street plans. There's two things to highlight here, is that there's the classification of streets, which are kind of a hierarchy of, you know, arterial streets, which are, you know, like Broadway and the Loop. And then you have minor arterials, and then the collector streets, kind of the anticipated vehicle miles traveled are, you know, varies based off of the classification of the streets. And so just kind of examples here, local streets being, you know, Heritage Drive, residential collector being Holly Tree Drive, you know, larger street pavement surface, and then Old Bullard Road serving as I guess that's a collector there, a commercial collector. And then also, we're all familiar with, you know, Loop 323 and South Broadway being major arterial streets. And then there's also this context component where, you know, as there's an urban core area where streets may be a little bit different. You don't expect to see large, you know, freeways or whatever in your urban core, but and then suburban areas and rural areas. And so really what the plan recommends is, you know, kind of specific standards for the context that they're in. So we're not expecting to have, you know, large freeways, or, you know, kind of have it contextual to the area. So the staff proposed or presented a proposed map adjustments to the Developers Roundtable and the UDC Review Committee. Both those groups are in agreement with the proposed city version of the Master Street Plan map. I do have, and this is kind of I'll try to go through these quickly, but generally this is the Master Street Plan as adopted, or as essentially shown by what the technical consultant prepared for the NPO. And then there are some adjustments that the city has recommended and would recommend adopting with the Master Street Plan with these adjustments. So these are just modified or you know, so up here showing the street alignment as it really should be shown before it was aligned a little differently. There's a proposed collector that was removed and realigned. That's down Caldwell Avenue. Another one here is Robertson Road. As it goes through into the Bellwood Park development, that's on their plan, their site plan or their development plan for that area, and so that was recommended to continue Robertson Road into that development there. Then some minor adjustments to continue streets that were that provide connectivity in these areas. This is on the northeast side. Just some modification here to realign where there's currently not a overpass across I-20, is to realign those streets. And then on the southeast quadrant here, this is just the continuation of East Grande Boulevard. That was not part of the the adopted master street plan or the recommended one, but we still feel like the preservation of that right of way is important as we continue to grow to the southeast or the east, and before 1249, before that alignment goes in, we still feel like it's a good thing to plan for that connectivity through that area there. That goes all the way out to Farm to Market 848. And then this another some modifications here is Barbie Road around Biloxi Avenue, Biloxi Drive. Just a slight alignment change there near Cumberland Academy. And then also on the previous or the current master street plan 2012, it does show a street connecting, or New Copeland Road connecting all the way to Biloxi Drive. That was not on the latest one, and so, but the review group felt that was important to put it back on there, at least for the time being. Biloxi Drive, or Farm to Market 756 and Biloxi are going through an upgrade at the moment, so that at the current moment, that's a recommendation to keep that on there. And then just looking at some other modifications here, as it seems to make sense there. Then the southwest quadrant here, this area here is recommended for some modifications. So this is Waldron Street near Cumberland Road. Currently, the master street plan does propose a collector street that's kind of a straight shot through current termination of Waldron Street to Cumberland Road. When looking at the development potential to the west, it was recommended to realign that to go further west and intersect with Cumberland Road at that location. And then over here on, this is Three Lakes Parkway, near Old New Day Road. There's proposed arterial street there. This whole area was proposed to be arterial. That just doesn't create the demand for arterial. Plus, it's more or less being built out there as a residential area, and there's a school, Owens Elementary, on the south side there. So that was downgraded to a collector street. And then the city water treatment plant there is kind of in the way of that connection, so it doesn't seem feasible to the group to continue with that connection there. Let's see. And then this, I think this is the last piece here, is this is essentially the western extension of West Grande Boulevard towards Farm to Market 2661, which is, kind of on the western limit of the county. That because there's not a bridge crossing there over 1249, that the alignment that was proposed didn't seem feasible, given that it would go kind of through a neighborhood there, but also there's no infrastructure there to continue that further going west, and so this really just aligns Grande with County Road 11, I think it's 1227, to continue west over the overpass and have that connection to the Farm to Market. And then again, one more modification, that was to add this alignment back to the master street plan. We weren't, the group wasn't sure why it was removed, but it seemed like it was something that was still needed. At least at this time. There's a list. I kind of went through all those, but I think there are some things that the city would still like to continue, as there's more studies and more engineering studies in some of these areas that this could be reviewed again, at least for some of these exceptions, but essentially what the staff is proposing here is to adopt the master street plan with these exceptions that are listed here, and that would be the city's version of the 2021 master street plan. continue? I know there's a lot. I've got
Yeah,
more.
Yeah, just go ahead.
Okay. This next item is is related to cross-access. The Tyler First Comprehensive Plan recommends the implementation of access management strategies through the creation of local access drives which connect developments. And so access management strategies such as this include the consolidation of driveways so that motorists do not need to enter a separate street or another street to access more than one property. Generally, we've seen this applied along TxDOT facilities like Old Jacksonville Highway. More recently here, this is the Grande Commons area with the Palomar Apartments and Walmart, neighborhood Walmart. And so if you've been through that area, you experience that there's essentially a shared access drive or frontage drive along the road there and then just a few driveways into the development, and that serves to preserve traffic capacity and eliminates the needs for additional lanes and potential conflicts in turning. Essentially, it maximizes the potential of the street facility. We do have areas in the city that we don't have access management as well as this, and so what the proposal here is to require that for essentially for commercial properties or non-residential properties that the shared drives would be required to be planned for with the development, or when there's a plat or subdivision of the property, that this would require that the property as feasible as necessary or as it allows, that that there's cross-access easements granted so that there is the ability to cross the property lines to get access to the roads. One question was, or has been, at what time does that occur? That would be, at what time does the extension continue? So it would be similar to essentially maybe like a sidewalk that as the property develops, that they would extend to the point that the connection would be anticipated. So, if they're the property that has already constructed a shared access drive to a point on that property, that they would connect it there and then connect it to the next point through their property or to the road if there's an approved driveway for that property. Again, this is intended to implement the Tyler First plan to have some access management on our major streets and to, again, ease the congestion in our streets. Some of the other some of the other items that were discussed relate to clarifying some of our street design and sidewalk standards. This actually it coincides with the master street plan recommendations. And so this one's just pertaining to sidewalks. And so even our sidewalk standards, or our active transportation or mobility standards, like sidewalks or walking path or shared use paths, are recommended based off context. So some of the rural streets or the suburban, urban core, downtown areas have different standards in terms of sidewalks and bike lanes and things like that. And so this really just codifies the recommended standards for that. And so essentially, our minimum sidewalk requirement for a local street, normal subdivision where is usually a 4-foot sidewalk. This kind of adds some elements, some context elements to it that maybe might be a 6-foot sidewalk if it's in an urban area versus a rural area, and things like that. And so this just adds that context to some of these. So on the major arterial streets, that again, if it's in an urban area, you might want to have a larger sidewalk, and that's what's recommended here versus your standard on a local street. And also similarly for streets, this is the current table in the UDC. There's more columns being added and more rows being added to show the different context, and so different standards for different types of streets. This is something that's been asked for over the years on you know, because there was some confusion on which street has to have bike lanes, which ones have to be, you know, certain standards, and so this is intended to clarify that, not so much change the standards. And so there's a lot there, but oh yeah, so these are the cross sections I'm referring to. So these are kind of the visual way to look at these. There's been modifications to the widths of the travel lanes. That's kind of the amendment that we've made from the master street plan recommendation, that there's a pedestrian buffer on the two ends there. Without having to change the right of way, we did. It was recommended that to reduce that pedestrian buffer and add that to the lanes generally. But this is what it looks like in practice. You know, these urban collector having a cycle track and a larger sidewalk. You know, urban arterials looking similar to this. There's a lot of stuff there. Okay, and moving on, this next item is should really serve as a clarification item, but the modular housing, which are homes that are built to essentially they're built and then moved to the site. They're not mobile homes. They're built on a permanent foundation, or they're placed on a permanent foundation. These types of homes are allowed currently in any single-family neighborhood. There are standards that, let me go here, there are some standards here that relate to the value and kind of some siding requirements, and that they're on a permanent foundation. So these are really the standards here, but currently the code does not allow those in the R2 zoning district, which until 2014, R2 did not allow for single-family homes. And so this amendment is to clarify that this type of housing would be allowed in R2 as it is currently allowed in any of the other single-family districts. Okay, and the last item I had here was related to signage. There's proposed amendments to the signage as it pertains to, or really clarification items related to the sign table. So in Chapter 10, the UDC, there's a table related to billboards, and the current, where it talks about setbacks, it seems to conflict with another section, or it's not clear enough with another section in the UDC, and so the only change there now is to add the reference into that table. So anybody reading that sign table would be referred back to another part of the code. So there's no standards being changed. It's really a clarification item. And then there is as it relates to content neutrality, we did look at we do review these quite often on if there's any signage requirements that we have that could be considered to be content based or whatever. And so the city has to be content neutral in how it applies signage. And so one of the items that we do have an amendment for is relating to flags. And so currently the code does not allow any commercial message on a flag. That could be considered to be content, based. And so we are removing that requirement. We're not prohibiting flags or anything like that. It's just removing the restriction on commercial message. There are still standards for how many flags and kind of the flagpole height and things like that, but we're removing that standard. And I think that's a pretty common practice that cities have. And so with that, these recommendations were presented to the Developers Roundtable on January 24th of this year, 2023, and to the Unified Development Code Review Committee on February 21st of 2023. Both groups are in general agreement with the recommended changes. is staff recommends approval of these UDC amendments.
Thank you, Kyle. Any questions for Kyle?
Kyle, if you go back to slide 1, no.
Absolutely, yes.
No questions.
No questions? Are the persons here who'd like to comment or participate in any of
The
this?
gentleman who just rose in the back? Mr. Noyes?
My name is Dan Noyes, 2301 East Irwin, and I was just here for clarification, and Kyle provided that.
Good.
Thank
Good.
you.
Thank you, Dan.
Anybody else wants to clarify anything that Kyle said? Or not, I think we've had an opportunity to review this. Is there a motion on ZA 23002, United Development Code?
Mr. Chairman, I move that,
review?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve ZA 23-002.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve this item. Any discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
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 That brings us to consent plats, Group A. Kyle, are these first three plats still eligible to be
Yes.
approved?
Staff recommends approval of these plats.
Staff recommends approval of F 23-002, P 23-002, and F 23-036. Any discussion on these items? If not, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve consent plats Group A.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent plats Group A. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Kyle, on consent plats Group P, are these still do not comply?
That's correct. Staff recommends denial of these plats.
Staff recommends denial of F 23-024, P 23-005, F 23-035, F 23-037, and F 23-034. Any discussion? Any comment from the public? If not, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we deny consent plats Group B.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to deny. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We will stand in recess and go across the street for our workshop.
Mr. Chairman, you'll have a quorum without me.
Are these mics on?